Well, there's a lot happening in the way of quarantine, changes to the quarantine situation, and the whole hospitality industry in Thailand. It's a lot of moving pieces. The only man to talk to is Bill Barnett from C9 Hotel Works. Bill, always great to catch up with you. Thanks for coming in.
It's a sunny day here in Bangkok. You can actually walk. I can see the sun actually a little bit. It's ping pong. That's what we're going to talk about today. Let's figure out what's happening really on the market here. Sorry about the
ball's going everywhere. Ping pong diplomacy. So the first question I've got, we've got this meet me in October thing. People coming back in October, or is it going to be earlier than that? When are people coming back to Thailand?
$1 million question, and I think we're seeing. Certainly today there's supposed to be an announcement in terms of coming in April, having a shorter quarantine period. So that's a step in the right direction. And there's a lot of speculation. There's been a lot of discussion about the October deadline as well, whereby the government's been. We saw the government this week in Phuket talking with the Ministry of Health, together with Tourism, together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We had a large.
We'll get to that in a sec.
Okay.
So at the moment, we do have a confirmed change to the quarantine. That's just happened today, although, as you said, it hasn't been gazetted, but it looks like that is happening.
Baby steps, and that anything's going to help at this point, but it starts the process.
Every time we do a story about this, the reaction from our readers and our viewers is that it's zero quarantine or nothing. So they seem to feel aggrieved of having to do any sort of quarantine.
This is a process, and I always go back to 9/11, and people took their shoes off at the airport. And the process is eventually people have to feel they're safe. They have to feel those things are in place. And I think this is going to be the same case. It's baby steps through this process. It's not all or nothing, because at the end of the day, it's going to be a process. The process is going to be long, and it's going to take time.
So the 7-day quarantine, just to sort of go through some of the details, will apply if you've been vaccinated in the past 3 months, but it doesn't apply to an entire continent, apparently.
Africa. So I think there's still, there still is that fear factor. And I think that's really the unknown. But again, we have to work on the positives, understand which countries are included, and we're going to see those really open up quickly. I think if you're going to make a business trip and you have to go for business, difference of 14 days is significant. It's 1 week less. That's
Sure.
a good step.
But it's still really not going to help the tourists who may get 2 or 3 weeks of vacation a year, and they're not going to spend even a week sitting in a hotel.
I think the speculation is whether by the middle of this year, in the European summer, whether we're going to see tourism start to return during that. And the next bellwether is going to be October, because October, the snowbirds coming to Thailand from the European countries, from Russia, from other places where the weather is inclement. So I think that's really the other time when we're going to see those tourists come back.
Now, the other change in the whole quarantine issue has been this introduction of the area quarantine, where people will be able to go to perhaps a nice beach hotel in a place like Phuket, and they'll be able to they'll have to stay in their room for the first 3 days. Then, if they have a negative COVID test, they'll be able to roam around the property. So I would think that people would be looking for nice big properties that they can roam around for the rest of their 14 days.
I think the recent villa quarantine was successful. Kudos to TAT on that one. Hats off, because they were able to bring a group in, successfully go through that. And now
one group though.
But again, it's baby steps. I get it.
What about the golf quarantine?
That seems to be. We've seen the group coming in already, though. In terms of that. So these are steps which are at least establishing sentiment. Sentiment is everything. You have to look back, and when people think about Thailand, when they start seeing travelers come back in, that impacts the financial markets. That impacts confidence. It's a positive.
Do you think the problem, though, that the people watching this may have is that there's this change to the 7-day quarantine, there's this new area quarantine, the villa quarantine, the golf quarantine. It's just getting a little bit confusing. Now, we, of course, try and keep up with the news and provide the latest information, but even we get a bit confused.
Join the rest. That's why we have the ping pong paddles here today, because we're pinging, we're ponging across. That's part of the problem. We get that. Information is everything. But I think we are seeing steps, and really the main milestones are really going to be the quarantine period of whether it goes to 7 days, 3 days, eventually nothing, and when we also see towards October when we do see a reopening if we have the vaccinations coming. To me, vaccinations are critical to the component, because there has to be, the communities have to feel safe having tourists come back in, and there has to be sentiment about safety. The fear factor is a huge thing, and I think that's important, and also flash testing, because at the end of the day, COVID's not going to go away anytime soon. We have to know if we do have a reoccurrence, you can't shut down the country, you can't shut down a hotel. You need a mechanism to flash test the staff and understand if people are infected or not. You have to have that ability. So flash testing, so it's a regime, it's not just a single solution.
All right, let's have a talk about what happened in Phuket on Tuesday, which was a big meeting. You mentioned some pretty heavy hitters going to that meeting. Who was there? What were they talking about?
Again, the TAT was there in full force. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Public Health was there.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Which is good, because this is important, because that's part of the, we always say, because TAT can come out and say, we're opening, but again, who's issuing the visas? Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we are seeing there's more cohesiveness in the public sector now while they're addressing, which comes from the top. That means the Prime Minister, and that means the central government is reacting to this in a logical way. And what they're saying is there's going to be guidelines issued, and that they think by October we're going to see the reopening.
So you still got another 6 months to go before we're going to perhaps see any flow of tourism. Will we ever see anything like 2019, 39.6 million people visiting Thailand?
Without a doubt. I don't think it'd be foolish for me to say it's going to happen next year or the year following, but will we ever rebuild the area? I mean, Thailand's blessed by location. We're within arguably 25 to 35% of the world's population. People are going to still go on holiday, people still will travel. Are we going to see numbers eventually bounce back? They will eventually. It's going to be a gradual process. It's going to continue to be painful for the next few years. Recovery will come, but it's going to be a period of time. And it's not measured in days, months, it's going to be measured in years.
I think maybe even decades personally, but I'm a bit pessimistic about all this. So what was decided at Phuket? Obviously this 7-day quarantine was decided. Anything else come from the industry players? What are they pushing for?
The industry players, again, are pushing for an early opening with the vaccine passports in terms of that, so that people who have a vaccine passport can come in to travel. But what's being addressed also is there's the discussions who's going to fund the vaccine. And that's really the main issue right now, because if you go into communities, you have to fund the broad community, who's going to pay for it?
You and I, expats, live here for a long time. We've got our own health insurance. When can we expect to line up for a vaccine?
Depends if you want Sinovac or do you want to wait for Astra or you want to wait for something else. Sinovac is going to be available over the next 30 days.
But who's going to, do I have to go to a hospital? Do I have to line up in a queue? Do I go to immigration? Can I get it from...
I've got my ping pong paddle because we're going to go back. I can't answer that question.
Do I have to go to Pat Pong, a massage parlor or something? And what do I do?
That process is still, it's going to be localized. I mean, that's obviously, it's going to go province to province. It's going to be here in Bangkok, where, through the municipalities and everything else, in a place like Phuket, through the aubergines and certainly these type of things, through all those districts. It's a trickle-down effect.
Yeah, all I can say that we do get a lot of requests for information about this from the expats watching, and we are aware and want to know the situation as well. We will give you that information as soon as we know. The fact is, though, at the moment, we simply don't know.
No, I mean, I think we can look to the U.S. right now. Forgetting the political scenario, we can see that, with over 10% of the U.S. population being vaccinated, we see momentum in that. So that, again, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but the tunnel's still a long tunnel.
Are you going to line up for the Sinovac, the vaccine from China?
Sinovac, no. As I said, with my age group, I would fall into the Astra. So I'll be lining up for the Astra. When I can get the Astra, I'll be the first in line to get it, sure.
Okay, what about if the Thais suddenly develop a vaccine? Would you be happy with that?
If it's tested and it's proven, why not?
So the question for you is that you run a business. You had a very successful consultancy business, well, you still do, but all this effect on hospitality and the hotel industry must have hit your business hard.
2019, I traveled 200 days. I mean, right now, the last time I traveled internationally was March 18th of last year. So certainly that has placed a big inhibition. I think really last year during the tough period, we had a very difficult time because we couldn't travel and our projects really slowed down. But what we found over the past 6 months, people working from home, people using Zoom meetings and everything else, it's not business as usual, but it's improved. We're seeing projects coming back in and we're seeing sentiment starting to move. And last year we worked in 11 countries, so our risk is spread out. The tourism industry isn't going to go away anytime soon. It still exists for us, and we do have, through that process. But again, sentiment's driving that. But it's taught us to work in a different way. And I think also one thing it's allowed us an opportunity is to rethink our business and how we do things and remodel that with our staff working from different places, the way we deal with clients differently, and also in terms of supporting. And I think you got to get back. And last year we did 25 webinars. We enlisted a lot of hotel markets. We've been working and doing videos online with small businesses. And hats off to these guys, because the people who are trying to survive, if you're a chef in a hotel who no longer has a job, we've seen guys baking bread out of their houses. We've seen these small pop-ups going on. I think the inspiration of those stories and keeping people working, I think it's going to be interesting because people can rethink their future. And you can say everything about the pandemic, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime crisis, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for reinvention. Okay?
So where are we in the vibe cycle? Are we sort of now getting more optimistic, or are we still in this pessimism? Oh my God, this is never going to improve. Where are we in that cycle?
I think we're turning the corner. We talked last year about the big bounce when it was going to come. The one thing we know from the Maldives, January of this year had higher occupancy than January of 2020, which was pre-COVID. So we know there's built up demand. We've demonstrated. You go to Dubai, the hotels are full. And I think when we look at places like Singapore, they haven't been able to go anywhere. They can't even go to Bintan, in terms of that. So we know there's pent up demand. So it's untrue that people will stop traveling. After 9/11, again, people were scared to get on airplanes. They did that. They took their shoes off at the airports. They went through the processes, the metal detectors, security screenings. They learned to travel again, right? But we believe there's a huge amount of pent up demand.
With the aviation industry, they've certainly suffered as well. Do you think we'll end up with fewer players in the Thai domestic market?
It's an interesting question, and we have a Thailand tourism forum on the 22nd of March, and we have an aviation consultant coming in. I think there is some stability, because in terms of what drives these airline carriers, some basically they can't let the industry fail. With the Middle East carriers, certainly we see strength in those, because those are the brands of countries, going to Qatar and Emirates as well. Certainly there will be some consolidation, but the industry is not going to fall over. The planes are out there. The planes have to get back in the air. That's the question.
Yeah, well, arriving in Suvarnabhumi Airport every week, there's just Thai Airways planes lined up, sure. Engines all sealed up, gathering dusts, the black mold growing on the planes. It's a very sad sight.
Sure, but I think we're going to see those planes back in the air probably by the fourth quarter of this year, beginning of next year.
Thai Airways, too big to fail?
Thai Airways, again, is in terms of certainly the transition from a state-owned enterprise to privatization efforts there, it's going to be an interesting storyline. But in terms of, it's actually, again, it's the face of Thailand. Are they going to let that industry and that particular group fail? Probably not.
Bill, thank you. You can take your ping pong bat and...
okay, well, I just had to find my ball here. It's somewhere else, but yeah.
You can play with your balls anytime you like, but not here. Bill Barnett from C9 Hotel Works, we appreciate you coming in. If people want to find out more, I've got any specific questions, what's a good way to contact you?
Reach out on our website, www.c9hotelworks.com. Happy to answer questions again, and I think we do believe that we are turning the corner. I think today, with all the pessimism as well, there's no blinders on. I think the important thing is that we are seeing some movement as well globally, and that's, we're on the way back, but it's a long journey.
Bill Barnett from C9 Hotel Works, always good to catch up with him. We, of course, will read your comments below, and Bill may even have some responses to those. We appreciate you watching today. Don't forget to subscribe to the Thaiger channel, and we look forward to seeing you next time.